Three new developments were presented during this week's Planning Committee meeting. Two biggest are at 109 Park Place Blvd and 303 Cundle Road East. 109 Park Place Blvd will have 475 units with residential parking. It is located in Ward 8 near Highway 400 and Mapleview Drive. First for Barrie, the developer is proposing to add residential development to a regional commercial shopping area. Given the lack of current residential units in the area, there were no major objections from the residents. However, residents raised traffic and other concerns about the proposed 505 residential units at 303 Cundles Road East. The development has been under planning for the past 10 years. According to the current plan, it will have 3 buildings, 12, 11, and 8 stories. Use the timestamp to jump to the relevant section of the video.
Now call the Planning Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being held in person and electronically in accordance with the Municipal Act, which provides for electronic or in-person participation. Members of the Planning Committee, we have 3 public meetings this evening. They will take place in the order they were printed. We'll get started first with the consent agenda, though, and in doing that, we'll move through the staff reports. Please ask that the item be held if you wish to discuss it. If not, it is approved as printed. The 3 staff reports on tonight's Planning Committee agenda. The first is with regards to an application for zoning bylaw amendment at 219 Bayfield Street. Does anyone wish to hold that? Seeing none, that is approved. Next is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 140 Lockhart Road. No holds on that. That is good news. A new industrial subdivision in our south end to help bring jobs to Barrie. And the third one is the Community Improvement Plan CIP Grant Approval Summary. The staff report on that, February to April 2022. Anyone wish to hold the staff report? Nobody. That is approved. Okay. That means the business of Planning Committee tonight will be to hold these 3 public meetings. If you're joining the meeting virtually, if you're watching us online and you have not yet registered, and now you're being recorded, I think the YouTube link was already on, so we do have the other recording as well. If you're joining the meeting virtually and have not yet registered and you do wish to speak tonight, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca. That's all one word, cityclerks@barrie.ca, or call 797-5353 and staff will send you the information required to participate virtually. Tonight's applications were submitted by the developers and deemed complete under the Planning Act to proceed to a public meeting. So as I mentioned, there's 3 of them. The first one will be to review an application for an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment submitted by North American Park Place for lands known municipally as 109 Park Place Blvd. Second is to review applications for an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of Fennelwood Corp. And that's for lands at 193 and 197 Blake Street. And the third meeting will be to review an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by the Jones Consulting Group on behalf of Pinady North Barrie Limited. That's for 303 Cundles Road East. Members of the Planning Committee will be listening to the presentations and the comments received during the public meetings. We will not be making comments or debating the items tonight. We have our chance to do that at a later date when the staff report is presented to Planning Committee. Ward councillors do have a chance to ask questions of clarification only on behalf of residents who were not able to be here tonight. So I will go to the ward councillors after the public comments. Questions will be noted by staff and the applicants, but we don't do Q&A with members of the public or councillors at this point, except for those questions of clarification from the ward councillors. So what we do is address all of the questions in the staff report. Planning staff will record all your questions and address those in a written format in the staff reports. Last note, if you're here in person tonight, thank you to the 4 of you who are. If you wish notification of the staff reports on these items, so when they're going to come forward to council for a decision in the future, You should sign the form that's on the table at the back of the room. That will make sure you get notified in advance when that staff report's coming to council. Ms. Banfield, Director of Development Services, could you confirm that notification for all three of these public meetings was conducted in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it was.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first public meetings to deal with Park Place, 109 Park Place Boulevard. I will call on Mr. Vella on behalf of Innovative Planning Solutions, who is joining us virtually tonight. Mr. Vella, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. Good evening. I'm here this evening on behalf of North American Development Group, as you've mentioned, and the presentation we're about to give you today is a joint presentation that will be provided by myself along with Ali Hamdi from Petroff Partnership Architects. And we're going to go through this presentation and answer any questions that anyone from the public or Planning Committee has. So I will share my screen. So as I mentioned, I'm here on behalf of North American Development Group, and I've got Ali Hamdi with me. And I also wanted to recognize Ron Richards from RJ Richards and Associates, who provided some assistance in preparing the presentation. The lands that we are under application for right now, Your Worship, are a portion of the Park Place Village lands that are outlined in red on this slide. And it is a central portion to the site. And the address is 109 Park Place Boulevard. It has frontage along Park Place Boulevard. The most recent building that is now occupied on the Park Place lands is the Great Canadian Brew House. And those lands are adjacent to a portion of the development proposal that is before you this evening. The lands also possess frontage along South Village Way. So South Village Way is an important east-west street within the village, and that street will bisect the proposed residential towers that are being considered within the development area. And then finally, along our eastern boundary, our lands are abutting Live 8-Way, which is the transit route through the Park Place lands. And there is 200 meters of frontage located along Live 8-Way. For greater context, as I'm sure members of Planning Committee and staff and the public are aware, the Park Place Village is a regional shopping center. There are a number of commercial amenities available within Park Place. And so we've listed a few of those here. There are some changes through time just based on market demand and the ever-changing shift towards virtual shopping. But this is a fairly up-to-date list of the current tenants that are occupying the Park Place Village site. For greater context surrounding the Park Place lands, there are a number of large big box users. So there's the Rona, the Costco, there's the Smart Centers site located at kitty corner to us at the interchange of Mapleview Drive and Highway 400, and also the Home Depot. I also want to note an important community building, the Sadlin Arena, and the Barrie Dog Off-Leash Park located beside the Sadlin Center that is used quite often for residents with dogs. The current official plan context for this site actually dates back to when these lands were subject to an Ontario Municipal Board hearing. Through that hearing, the lands were designated general commercial with a special provision. It is recognized in the city's official plan as a defined policy area R. And if you were to review the official plan under section 4.8.9.1, you would find the policies related to the Park Place lands and how they've developed to date. Similarly, from a zoning perspective, the lands currently possess a general commercial C4 zone with a special exception. It's a very detailed exception relating to the overall master plan of the Park Place Village. And those provisions are contained under section 304 of the bylaw. So the amendments that we have before you this evening are a first for Barrie in the sense that we are proposing to add residential development to a regional commercial shopping area. That hasn't been done yet in Barrie, so we're excited to be the first in bringing a new mixed-use style of development to a major regional destination. So the amendments that are before planning staff and ultimately planning committee will seek to permit residential uses within the defined policy areas contained within the official plan, as well as the special provisions in the zoning bylaw under the general commercial zone. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ali Hamdi, who will describe the proposal.
Thank you, Darren, and good evening, everyone. My name is Ali Hamdi. I am a partner at Partnership Architects. Just for a bit of context and background, the Park Place Master Plan is centered around the theme of a main street, right in the heart of the property. It's a district where the design of the outdoor public areas emphasize great pedestrian-friendly environments and well-appointed and accessible public spaces that create a unique open-air shopping experience. The illustration you see is a blown-up site plan of the new residential development within the village district. And the inset drawing on the bottom right is a key plan showing the development in the context of the overall shopping center master plan. When completed, this new community will be made up of 2 residential buildings with active at-grade uses, complemented by new landscape amenity areas. These are early days in the process, so in terms of residential statistics, we are talking about approximately 350,000 square feet of development that will take place over 3 phases, with an anticipated 475 units planned. Resident parking is planned to be located below grade, generally, while resident visitor parking and retail patron parking will be located at grade. Next slide, please. This aerial view to the northeast shows the proposed massing configuration. 2 new 6-story residential buildings are proposed parallel to the north-south axis of the village main street, with extensions east toward Bayview that each terminate at a north and south point block tower, the north tower being 16 stories high, the south tower being 12 stories. The building extensions that link these 6-story blocks to the point block towers will be 5 stories in height with semi-private rooftop resident amenity terraces. Next slide, please. Residential blocks fronting onto the village have been sized in terms of their length and height to be compatible with the existing village's pedestrian scale and are suitably proportional to the 40-meter wide village boulevard. This approach is best for maintaining the current open-air village experience and walkability while facilitating proper building height transition. Next slide. Building height transition of the village is further achieved by locating the taller residential point block towers furthest away from the village. By keeping heights lower at the village, the 6-story blocks can still contribute to the village in a positive way while mitigating the impact of deep shadows sometimes associated with the taller residential blocks. Durable premium finishes are planned for all of the new buildings, residential buildings that we are planning, and those finishes will maintain the same look and character of the material palette you see today on the retail village buildings. Next slide. The village district of Park Place has been designed from a pedestrian perspective with walkable streets, principal entrances, and active storefronts, and is very well suited to support residential intensification. We believe the village district will in fact become even more vibrant and engaging with the addition of the proposed residential blocks and their associated public areas. In fact, our goal in designing the residential blocks is to further enhance and add to the village's already wonderfully landscaped sidewalks, amenities, patios, and plazas, all of which will benefit from the natural surveillance and overlook that the new residential will offer by way of upper story apartment windows, balconies, and rooftop amenity terraces. Next slide. Residential blocks fronting on the village will maintain the same active retail and restaurant uses at grade that we see today on the existing main street. And with the expansion east, we will create a new opportunity to expand the commercial frontage to meet the new point block towers. This village expansion east allows us to improve and reinforce existing connections to Bayview Drive and to improve and reinforce existing connections to existing locations on site such as the Barrie Transit Bus Hub and LA Fitness. We are really excited about the idea of introducing residential to this established center and the synergies that will be created with the many shops and services that will be accessible from the new residence doorstep. Next slide. In fact, the Park Place Master Plan has in place numerous pedestrian connections and linkages, as Darren alluded, to many community-oriented amenities, all within a 15-minute walk from the proposed residential development, including, of course, many shops, restaurants, and services, a 20-acre naturalized park, the Barrie Transit Bus Hub, a dog run park, and the Barrie Colts Entertainment Complex. These connections and linkages for the Park Place Master Plan is the framework that it's built on. And it's one that supports mixed-use intensification at this center, as well as supports the outdoor public spaces that we will add to make such developments a success, such as this example, a proposed pocket park that we are imagining that will be located right off of the village main street. Next slide, please. And so in closing, I'd like to say that as a team, we are really excited to advance this opportunity to see residential intensification at Park Place. Through our continued consultation with the city and the community, our goal for this property is to see it continue to thrive and to evolve from taller buildings and higher densities into a true mixed-use complete community that will support the growth, the future growth and the longevity of this popular lifestyle center and this area in South Barrie. So I think with that, I will pause there and turn it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation, Darren and Ali. I will call on Celeste Kitsimetry, our senior planner, to give us an update on the status of this application.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman, members of Planning Committee and the public. Further to the presentation by Mr. Vella and Mr. Handy, and the memo provided to Planning Committee by staff, I'm going to provide a brief update regarding the status of the application and the primary planning and land use matters being considered. As noted in the presentation, staff did hold or facilitate a neighborhood meeting that was attended by Board Councillor Jim Harris, planning staff, and approximately 23 attendees in total. Many of the comments and questions raised are similar to those that will be investigated by staff in general, which include the change in land use to include residential development, the integration of residential uses with the existing commercial uses, and the traffic considerations both within Park Place and the adjacent roads being Mapleview Drive and Bayview Drive. We are expected to return to council with an official plan amendment and amendment to the zoning bylaw recommendation in early 2023. All of the submission materials and key updates associated with the development of the site are also available for viewing online and on the city's proposed developments webpage under Ward 8 at 109 Park Place Boulevard. Alternatively, you can contact me directly. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to hear any questions of clarification and to hear from members of the public. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Kitsimetry. I don't know that we had anybody register online in advance. Madam Clerk, has anybody emailed or called in?
No, Mayor Lehman, we have nobody registered online to speak.
Okay, I'll just remind anyone watching, if you do wish to join the meeting and speak at this public meeting, it's cityclerks@barrie.ca or 797-5353. Oh, I remembered. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who wishes to speak with regards to this application? Okay, seeing none. If there is nobody online, I will go to the ward councillor, who I believe is Jim Harris. Do you have any questions of clarification for the planners or the applicant?
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Just a couple, and like the residents, there's not much concern, lots of interest and excitement about this new type of lifestyle arrangement that can be accommodated by this development. So I just and I had spoken just briefly with Ms. Kitsimetry, or pardon me, with Ms. Banfield and Mr. Vella, but in the north part of the property, is adjacent to a green space, which is city owned, and curious about the possibility, maybe both to city staff, Mr. Bella, about the potential for this project to maybe spur some excitement about enriching that space, that green space. So I don't know if anybody wanted to comment, maybe Mr. Bella or Ms. Katsimitry. Thank you.
Maybe Mr. Bella first and then Ms. Katsimitry.
Through Mayor Lehman to Councillor Harris, I didn't want to overstep. So thanks for the question, Councillor Harris. We would definitely be interested in exploring that opportunity. For members of council that don't know, that land was dedicated to the city of Barrie when the initial Park Place development was registered. So there was 20 acres of land dedicated to the city that constituted the parkland contribution for this site. And so those lands, when they were part of Molson Park, there was a skate pond there. There were trails running through that area. So there was a use of those lands for active enjoyment. And if there is an opportunity to work with the city to reinstate some form of active use for residents of this development or citizens of Barrie as a whole, we would definitely be interested in working with the city on that.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris. I don't think there's much more that I need to add from that. Certainly we can take that back and speak with our parks planning staff regarding the reactivation of the open space area.
That's wonderful, thank you. And maybe the final question, I'm not sure if it's for Mr. Bell and Mr. Hamby, but we have some interest in wondering if there'd be more EV charging stations included as part of the development. I know there's some there in the, I think it's the north east corner, but would there be more as part of the development?
It was amazing how Councillor Harris's lips moved, but that question was from Councillor Morales. That's incredible. I'm just kidding. Mr. Bella, EV charging stations.
I think I'll pass that over to Ali. He's more antiquated with the design. So Ali, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, we are certainly looking at that as a possibility, whether it's in the form of rough-in in the short term and then seeing it realized in the long term. But that's something that North American is certainly exploring, and we'll work with staff on that.
Great. Thank you very much. That's all my questions. My name.
Thanks, Mr. Harris. Councillor Harris. Anyone else register for the meeting, Madam Clerk?
No, Mayor Lehman.
Okay, if we haven't had anyone else online, then I will declare this public meeting concluded. Thank you very much, Mr. Bella, Mr. Hamby, and we look forward to seeing the staff report on this one. Certainly a first, but probably not a last, given the state of the housing demand for housing these days. So thank you. Our second public meeting tonight is with regards to 193 and 197 Blake Street. So it is Innovative Planning Solutions on this one as well, on behalf of this time Fennelwood Corp for 193 and 197. Is it Mr. Bella again? Tyler Butler, I think. James Hunter, neither. All right. If Mr. Hunter can be brought into the meeting. Okay, there he is. Mr. Hunter, welcome to Planning Committee, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Good evening, Planning Committee. My name is James Hunter. I'm here with Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of Fennelwood Corporation for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment here tonight. I'm just going to share my screen. So the subject application applies to two properties, which are located at 193 and 197 Blake Street. This is at the intersection of Blake Street and Nelson Square East within the North Shore planning area. The lands have 40 meters of frontage along Blake Street and 25 meters of frontage along Nelson Square East, and land holdings of just over 1,000 meters squared, or 0.1 hectares. The 197 property contains a single detached dwelling, which has been located on the property since 1954. And the 193 Blake Street has historically been used for a mixed-use building, and this has been on the property since 1873. The building was converted into a restaurant, convenience store, and a 9-unit rooming house in 1960. However, this building has been vacant for a number of years. The surrounding land uses of the subject lands are quite diverse. Includes general commercial located to the north, and then low density residential further to the north. To the east, we have low density residential primarily, and then along Vancouver Street, we have a 4-story condo, a 4-story apartment, and then another 3-story apartment. To the south, it is low density residential, and then adjacent to the west is the Parkview Community Center, as well as Nelson Square Park, and then a mix of low density residential and the Nelson Square lookout. The application that we have before us is a 5 townhouse unit development with a 4-story building height. The density proposed is 48 units per hectare. Each lot will have a range of size from 183 to 242 meters squared, and it has frontages ranging from 7.2 to 10.1 meters squared, or meters. Larger unit sizes are proposed, which is between 217 and 222 meters squared, which is in the mid 2,000 square feet. And site access for each unit is off Blake Street, and there will be a singular access by a double driveway to units B, C, D, E, as well as 1 driveway to lot A. So this represents a parking ratio of 3 spaces per unit for the 4 units here, and the N unit has a parking space ratio of 2 spaces per unit. We've included a 7-meter front yard setback, as well as a 7.1 meter rear yard setback. And then we have a 3-meter exterior side yard to Nelson Square East. The applicant is targeting a high standard of architectural design to match the local market and quality of homes in the surrounding neighborhood towards the shore. The images here are conceptual renderings of what the potential townhouse is to look like. What we do have included are amenities on the 4th floor, including a private loft and a terrace overlooking the rear yards. We have a flex space on the ground floor level for a home office or a gym. And we also have 91 to 125 meters squared of landscaped outdoor amenity space in the rear yard, which provides the private patios. At a corner location, the exterior unit up here, it has been designed to frame the street corner, providing a heightened curbside appeal and pedestrian scaled public realm. As well, the landscaped open space has been preserved around the perimeter of the site to implement enhanced landscaping measures and an improved public realm. The subject lands are currently designated as general commercial by the 2018 official plan. They are located on Arterial Road, which is Blake Street, and then they are also within the built up area. In order to permit a townhouse development, we need an official plan amendment to the residential land use designation. To provide a brief overview of the official plan, the residential land use designation does permit all forms of tenure housing. The lands are within the built up area, which the plan directs at least 40% of residential dwelling unit development to be within these areas on an annual basis. And intensification represents an essential component of the city's growth management strategy, with support for medium density developments in order to provide a complete range of housing choices for residents. Intensification and redevelopment is encouraged to promote an increase in planned and built densities and to achieve a desirable compact urban form. The proposed development does satisfy the locational criteria and the staging and phasing policies of the official plan. And the official plan does direct the zoning bylaw to be amended to allow for innovative housing, where it is recognized to be in accordance with good land use planning principles. In summary, the subject development is supported by the objectives of the official plan. To accompany the official plan amendment, we are also seeking a zoning bylaw amendment. The subject lands are currently zoned general commercial C4, and to prevent a townhouse development, we need a zoning bylaw amendment to the residential multiple dwelling second density, the RM2TH zone, along with our rezoning requesting site-specific special provisions. To support our application, a number of technical studies have been done, including a planning justification report, a market study, a shadow analysis, engineering report, geotechnical report, hydrogeological assessment, arborist assessment, architectural drawings and elevations, and then also phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessments. In conclusion, the applications would permit the development of 5 townhouse units. And to permit this development, we would need an official plan amendment from general commercial to residential. As well, a subsequent zoning bylaw amendment application is required to rezone the lands from general commercial C4 to residential multiple dwelling second density townhouse with special provisions. Development through intensification is supported as it efficiently utilizes land, existing infrastructure and services, and does contribute to a more desirable compact form. The proposed development offers suitable residential intensification and development within the built-up area of the city on lands that are underutilized and ready for redevelopment. In support of improved housing attainability, the proposal would contribute to diversified housing options in the city, while also assisting the city in achieving its directed housing and density targets. And collective, the development does align with all levels of policy, seeking evolution into more complete communities. Thank you, Planning Committee. That concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions directed my way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. I will, yes, and Tyler Butler is our planner. I confused us the names earlier. I'm sorry, Tyler. Thank you for coming to Planning Committee tonight. And if you can give us an update on the status of the application. Thanks, Tyler.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee and the public. Further to Mr. Hunter's presentation and the memo provided to Planning Committee, I will provide an update regarding the status of the application and the primary planning and land use matters being considered. There was a neighborhood meeting held virtually on October 18th, 2021, with approximately 33 attendees, including Ward 1 Councillor Claire Rietma, planning staff and representatives from the owner and applicant. And the primary comments received during that was the land use compatibility. Residents expressed a desire to see a residential development constructed. There was privacy concerns as related to the increased building height. There was traffic concerns related to the appropriateness of individual driveway access from Blake Street, and urban design comments related to the built form and heritage characteristics of the neighborhood. As noted by James Hunter, the official plan amendment is required to introduce a residential development on the lands. And currently the matters being reviewed by staff are the change in land use to facilitate the proposed development, an understanding of the functionality of the site as proposed, including but not limited to parking, landscaping, pedestrian connectivity, and vehicular access, circulation, and safety, and the urban design of the proposed development and ensuring that the development incorporates the characteristics of the neighborhood. We would expect this to return to Planning Committee in early 2023, and all of the submission material and key dates associated with development of this site are also available online on the city's proposed developments page under Ward 1, 193 and 197 Blake Street. Alternatively, you can contact me directly. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions of clarification and hear from the public. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Butler. Thanks for the update. Okay, and again, I don't think we had anyone register online for this one. Clerk is shaking her head no, but a reminder again, it's cityclerks@barrie.ca, cityclerks@barrie.ca by email if you wish to speak in the meeting, if you're watching tonight, or you can call 797-5353 and our staff will give you the information you need to join the meeting. Is there anyone in person, anyone in the chambers here tonight who wishes to speak regarding this particular application? Come on down to the podium, sir. Welcome to Planning Committee. We do just need your name and address for the record of the meeting.
Hello, my name is Arne Innerlein and I live on 359 Cartwright Street, which is directly above the proposed development. And overall, we supported the application. The only concern we might have is the overall height. The overall height recommended for that area is a maximum height of 10 meters and proposed is approaching 14, which would be an extra 40%. And I also would like to see that sort of complements the development to the east, the Vancouver Place, which is 3 stories from the elevation of Blake Street. It's been sort of represented being a 4-story, but it's a 3-story from Blake Street, which I don't think exceeds the elevation of the 10 meters. And overall, I think it's a good development, but I think we should maybe keep the height in mind.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for those comments and for being here to give them. Anyone else here tonight wish to speak to this one? 193, 197 Blake? Okay, Madam Clerk, did we have anyone else online? Okay, Councillor Rietma, any questions of clarification?
Yes, just a couple, and they're both for Ms. Banfield. The first one is there was some correspondence from the people that just spoke about height, and also there was correspondence about driveways. In your review, is it safe to assume that your report is going to come back to us and deal with both of those questions?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Rietma, absolutely. Any comment that we hear will be addressed in the planning staff report when it comes back to council.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, as you heard from the delegation tonight as well, there's fairly strong support in the neighborhood for this application, subject to these technical things, of course. We often get criticized for, slowing down development, or it takes too long and all those kind of things. Is there a way that we could, you could see us moving this development forward in some fashion or other? I know that Mr. Tyler suggested that, early in the new year. Is there any way of doing it earlier than that?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Rietma. So we will do the technical review. We provide comments back to the applicant. Sometimes those comments do require plans and reports to be revised. If they're able to take a look at those comments and respond and revise things quickly, then we certainly can try to move forward. There's not a whole bunch of meetings between now and the end of the year, but absolutely, if we can move things forward, we absolutely do.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. With that, I will declare this public meeting concluded. Thank you, Mr. Hunter, and thank you, Mr. Butler, for being here tonight for this meeting, and to those in the audience who are here tonight for this one. And that means we can move to our third public meeting, and this one is for 303 Cundles Road East. I will remind everyone watching again, if you want to speak at this meeting, cityclerks@barrie.ca. 797-5353, and staff will give you the information you need to come into the call online. And I will now call on a representative from the Jones Consulting Group on behalf of Pinady North Barrie Limited to give us the presentation on this application. Mr. Duhamel, welcome to Planning Committee. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of committee, staff and the public. My name is Ray Duhamel with the Jones Consulting Group, and I'm presenting this evening on behalf of Pinady North Barrie Limited, who own lands at 303 Cundles Road East and are proposing a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the development of that site. I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I have a presentation to work through. Your Worship, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
All good.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so this first slide is a block context plan that provides an overview with building footprints and by color, the types of land uses that are in the area of the subject lands, which are where my cursor is in the middle of the page. The center point is at 0. This is 250 meters away, and then the outside of the circle is about 500 meters away. So that's somewhere in the, depending on how you calculate walking distance, somewhere in the vicinity of about 3 to 7 minutes of walking. So this is a mixed use area. The lands themselves are proposed for residential, and I'll speak to that in a few minutes. These form part of a much larger master plan block. I'll speak to this as well again, which substantially has been developed to the east with regional and local level shopping, including a retail, gas bar, and a number of service commercial uses. And then I think the master plan is approved for somewhere in the magnitude of upwards of 500,000 square feet for that area. And then immediately to the west is the Junction residential development. There are 2 buildings, 6 stories, comprising 120 units. Further to the west, there's a Catholic elementary school, a Catholic public school. So there's a French Catholic elementary school, a Catholic high school, and across the street to the north, there's a another Catholic elementary school, commercial and industrial uses depicted in green, and then again in blue is the industrial or employment uses, and then some more institutional uses in the form of a church immediately across the street from the site. And then there's 2 subdivisions that were developed here, and then a third up top that were developed that contain a mixture of residential, predominantly single detached, although there's townhouses here and townhouses along Lionsgate Boulevard. For context, again, just to confirm, this is Cundles Road, and across the street, the intersection for reference points, if anybody raises the street Pacific Ave, just keep that in mind. That's the connecting point across the road. All right. This next slide shows an aerial photograph of the property. It's currently vacant. The site is 1.93 hectares of an overall 18-hectare site that's been comprehensively developed. And there's 74 meters of frontage on Cundle Road East on this particular part of the property. The right side of the screen is just zoomed in to give a little bit more detail, showing the existing commercial. And of course, the 2 buildings immediately to the west of the junction of residential buildings. A few streetscape shots for you to provide some context. Immediately across the street to the north is the Free Methodist Church. And then there's the exterior side yard of a single detached dwelling fronting onto Pacific Avenue. If you're looking east from Cundles Road, you'll see the commercial development that exists. That's part of the master planned 18-hectare site. And then looking south, this is on Cundles Road, of course, looking straight south, and you can see Highway 400 in the background. And then on this plan and on the plan to the west, you can see the junction residential development of 6 stories and 120 residential units. This site has a long history of planning approvals and master planning, dating back to 2006, when an official plan amendment was adopted by council to permit mixed-use development on the lands. There was a corresponding zoning bylaw amendment that was approved also in 2006 to permit a mixture of residential and commercial. There was another zoning bylaw amendment approved in 2015 that allowed for established parking ratio, and the current zoning permits 200 units across this entire residential site. There was a series of master development agreements and plans that were developed over the years of 2012 to 2013. And the most recent activity on the site is the construction of the junction. The approvals were granted in 2016 for both a zoning bylaw amendment and site plan approval. And there's so much detail in this plan. I just wanted to show it for illustrative purposes because this is about 10 years old now. This is the master plan showing the overall development of this whole site. And what's changed is really the junction area and this area in red, which is the proposed 303 Cundle Road East. The provincial policy statement and the growth plan are fairly integral documents to land use planning in Ontario, as I'm sure most are aware. Both of these documents have been amended several times. There's actually an entirely new provincial policy statements twice since the original 2006 master plan for this overall site was approved. But the overall, in my view, that the proposed application, as I will illustrate when I present that in a few slides from now, implements the provincial direction towards creating compact and efficient use of land and optimizing the existing infrastructure on the site. So the next 2 slides, I'm going to speak about the city's official plan. And the previous 2 meetings talked about the official plan. I'll just provide a little more context. An official plan is a land use planning document that guides land use planning decisions over a period of time. In this case, this is the consolidated official plan of 2018. This was first planned and put together in the years about 2007 and ultimately adopted by the ministry or approved by the ministry in 2010. And it planned out to 2031. And what this plan included was that this whole property, this master plan property, is designated as general commercial. And specifically, there's, as you heard previously, there was an amendment, and that's been incorporated into the plan for recognizing that this is mixed-use commercial and residential. And there's also a fairly momentous undertaking this year in 2022 in terms of recent planning history in Barrie. This council adopted the Barrie's new official plan in February, and it's now sitting with province, hopefully for eminent final approval. And what's notable about the new official plan is that where the previous plan planned to the year 2031, this new plan will replace the current one and plans out to the year 2051. And because it's been adopted by council, it's relative to the overall application that's been put forward. And as you can see, there's two key slides, two key components of the OP I wanted to share with you among hundreds of pages. But the first is that this property and everything actually south of Cundles Road is all in this yellow shade, are all within what's known as a strategic growth area. And then you'll see on the slide to the bottom that this area is shown here as being medium density. And according to the new official plan, medium density comprises development that is a minimum of 6 stories in height up to a maximum of 12 stories in height. And it also allows for a minimum density of 125 units per hectare up to a maximum of 300 units per hectare. So that's the framework upon which has helped. It's not determinative, but it's helped inform the application that is before you this evening. The current site is zoned commercial C4, which is a general commercial zone, and there's some special provisions that dated back from 2006 and 2015 and the junction amendment in 2016 overall. There's a proposal, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, which is the purpose of this meeting this evening, would be to permit a maximum of 12-story buildings, permit 425 additional residential units, 505 in total, and permit a rear yard setback of 3.5 meters adjacent to Highway 400. We followed the prescribed planning process, which included pre-consultation in February 2021, where we received feedback from city departments and agencies on the proposed application. And then there was a virtual neighborhood meeting that was held in June of 2021 that reviewed and discussed this plan as substantially shown, which was 3 buildings, all 10 stories high, with an internal street layout, as you can generally see the way my cursor follows, and links in with the existing private street network here and connects out across the road from Pacific Avenue. And during the neighborhood meeting and pre-consultation, there was basically 6 major themes that were identified as comments and concerns. I've kind of listed them, I have listed them in order of effectively how many people and how many comments were geared towards each comment. And so by far, I think the most comments were made towards traffic. And as a result of that, not surprisingly, as part of the formal zoning bylaw amendment application, a detailed traffic study was prepared by the BA group, which reviewed the planned traffic, the current existing development traffic, and the future growth traffic in the area to identify whether or not the proposed development can be accommodated by the existing road and infrastructure. And the study concluded that it is. And I'm sure we'll hear some comments tonight. I've read those in the public record already about still remaining concerns about the traffic impacts. And I would respond to that by saying that fortunately there's dedicated traffic engineers at the city who will be reviewing the traffic report, and the traffic report is prepared in accordance with ministry guidelines that are quite specific about traffic and the functioning of roadways and levels of service that are needed to be provided. So I'll speak again a little bit more to help the public understand where that traffic study is available to be reviewed. The second point was parking. The traffic study also includes a parking study that it investigated using proxy cites, different existing buildings and the parking ratios. And they've concluded that the site does not need more than 1.1 parking spaces per unit, but they do recommend an additional 0.15 parking spaces for visitors. So while the current zoning allows 1.1 parking spaces per unit, the proposed parking study actually recommends a total of 1.25, comprised of 1.1 parking spaces for the units and 0.15 for visitors. There was concerns about building height, views, and placement, and I'll speak to that one when I flip to the next slide. There was also comments about landscaping, make sure that there is open space, and there will be both indoor and outdoor amenity space that exceeds the requirements of the bylaw significantly on the plan. There was comments about making sure that pedestrian connections and active transportation and transit are available. And then a final comment, making sure that there's infrastructure to be able to support this plan. And that was demonstrated through a functional service report and stormwater management report that was prepared by WMI Engineering in town as part of the submission. So I'd just like to highlight the supporting information that is available on the City of Barrie's website. The city's website's excellent. It contains the full submission materials, and members of the public are welcome to go on to the city's website and download and read any of the studies and plans. And I encourage you specifically, if I suspect the most concerns are parking and traffic, which are this study right here. And then there's also a sun and shadow plan. And I noticed that there was some comments from the public record today on sun and shadows. So if you're not sure where those are, then the city planner, Celeste Symmetry, will be able to, you could contact her and she could help you navigate you to where those are located on the city's website. So here is the revised site plan that has been submitted with the application. The most notable change is that where there were 3 buildings of 10 stories each proposed before, there's now still three buildings, but they've been staggered in height. So pushing the taller building, again, adjacent to Highway 400 here, this is 12 stories, 11 stories here adjacent to Cundles Road, and then 8 stories in the mid building here. And their architect has done a great job of integrating a lot of step backs and variations in the buildings to provide an opportunity to decrease the massing on the site. Overall, as I noted, there's 505 residential units in total, and there's about 632 underground and service parking spaces, which equates to the ratio of 1.25, which you may recall aligned with what was contained in the parking study by BA. Just a couple more slides, and then we'll open it up to the public, your worship, members of committee. Here are a couple images to illustrate the plan and how it has been oriented towards the main intersection of the site across from Pacific Avenue. The massing is oriented towards that intersection. You can see the integration of step backs, the variation use of balconies and building materials. And there's actually individual uses at grade for individual at grade access and activation of the streetscape. This slide, I thought the residents online or in the council chambers would appreciate being able to see the perspectives in relationship to the adjacent junction residential developments. And I'm only showing you a few slides, and if they were to go onto the city's website, there's a fulsome architectural package that was submitted as part of the application that provides a lot more information. But this provides the context of the relationship with buildings. You can see the stepping of the buildings. They're not all uniformly 12, 11, and 8 stories in height. As you can see, there's variation in the buildings and variations in materials and articulation of those same buildings, as you can see in both. And then there's spatial separation, as you can see, the parking lot for the junction, and then there's additional parking lot that provides some spatial separation in the center portion of the site. And that concludes my presentation, your worship, members of the committee. I would be happy to answer any questions, and I will stop sharing.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Duhamel. I'll ask Celeste Kitsimetry, our senior planner, is at the podium to give us an update on the status of the application.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, members of Planning Committee and the public. Further to Mr. Duhamel's presentation and the memo provided to Planning Committee by staff, I will provide a quick update regarding the status of the application and the preliminary planning and land use matters being considered. I would also like to note that in addition to the neighborhood meeting, which was well attended and referenced by Mr. Duhamel in his presentation, there are several pieces of correspondence and emails that were provided to Planning Committee as circulation items with the agenda tonight. Each of the comments and that have been received will be considered by staff and addressed in the presentation, in the staff report moving forward. As noted by Mr. Duhamel, the zoning bylaw amendment is to amend something that already does have site-specific provisions for residential use on the subject commercial site. There are just 3 provisions that are requested, being to propose 12 stories in height, the addition of a total of what would be 625 residential units, 505 new ones, and 120 currently occupied on site. And the matters currently under review by staff include the integration of this proposed development with the existing residential and commercial land uses, traffic impacts, parking, and amenity space. Key components of the review will also be contributors to the review are the NVCA and the Ministry of Transportation with regards to the Highway 400. The full analysis will be brought forward at a later date when the staff report is brought forward to Planning Committee, and that is expected to be sometime in early 2023. All of the submission materials and key dates associated with the development of the site are also available for viewing online on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 3, 303 Cundles Road East. Alternatively, you can contact me directly. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions of clarification and to hear from members of the public. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the update, Ms. Getsymmetry. We did have a number of people register to speak, but again, a reminder that the email, if you're watching and you haven't yet registered, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353. If you are registered to speak for this meeting, you can use the raise your hand function or press #9 on your phone to raise your hand and #6 to unmute yourself. I will ask that once a member of the public's joined the virtual meeting, please do begin by stating your first and last name and your address for the record, and then you can go ahead with your comments. I'll just do, I'll call first to see if there's members of the public here in the audience tonight who would care to speak to this. Anyone wish to speak to this tonight? No? Okay. I will proceed then with those who registered online. Our first speaker is Steve Kinsella. If we can bring Mr. Kinsella into the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And members, council, and staff. My name is Steve Kinsella. I live at 5 Pacific Avenue in Barrie, opposite the proposed development. First off, I just wanted to say that I am in support of more accommodation in Barrie, be it whether it be condos or rental apartments. I would prefer to see rental properties be built across the road because they are in more drastic need in Barrie than condos, I believe. My main concern is with the entrance to the site opposite Pacific Avenue. With the 505 residential units proposed, that could accommodate an extra 1,000 cars a day going into that the complex. I have visually seen accidents occur at the intersection right now since the development has been built over the years, and there's constantly near-miss accidents almost every 2 to 3 hours per day. You have, especially if you have a car going in the center turn lane, it's a 5-lane road on Cundles. And if you're turning onto Pacific Avenue, stop to make a left, you've got cars coming out of the theater entrance, if I can use that phrase now, and they'll either cut in front of the car that's making a left turn onto Pacific, or they cut behind the vehicle that's making a left onto, and then accelerate into the 2 westbound lanes. The traffic speed limit on where it is a 50-kilometer zone. However, cars are proceeding well over the speed limit, 50 to 70 kilometers to an hour, according to the flashing sign that is visible on the post that's in the area. This is the main route to RVH for the ambulance going along there on Cundles. On any day, it's conceivable to see 3 to 4 ambulances traveling on the road, going full lights and sirens. It's the main route for the Barrie Fire Service to gain access to Highway 400 southbound as they travel along Cundles to gain access onto the road. And that is my main concern, is just right now you have people coming out of the subdivision on Pacific jaywalking across 5 lanes of traffic to go over to the theater or to the restaurants or the bank or whatever. People being people, they just don't want to walk down the street 200 or 300 meters to cross with the lights and then walk back. So my concern is with the 2 bus stops being directly right in front of the entranceway to the complex, whether people get off on the bus and walk in, or get off on the Pacific side and then we'll cross the road again, going through 5 lanes of traffic. Again, that's what they were. The parking lot is fairly full at nighttime and throughout the day over in the theater complex. And I think you definitely will need a set of lights to be installed, stoplights at the intersection of Pacific, which will help control the traffic flow on Cundles, slow it down, and give people a proper chance to cross the road going into, as well as the kids going to school in the areas. And another concern that I have with the height of the buildings being 12 stories now, and I don't know if it's been examined by anybody, but the air ambulance, they use that way, depending on the pilot that's coming in, will travel over the junction or over to some of the houses. And with it being 12 stories now, would there be some sort of warning lights be installed on the top of those buildings to so there wouldn't be, in the event of fog or bad weather, an accident taking place with the air ambulance coming in so low? There are times it comes in just several hundred feet over the houses in our subdivision. And I don't know if that's been examined at all as well. But that's my main concern, is just the traffic flow, to get some sort of traffic device at the intersection to control the traffic and for safety of the people in the area. And I think this should be paid for by the developer, not come out of the tax base. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Kinsella. A lot in that, and thanks for coming tonight to give us your comments. Our next speaker is, or the next person who registered was Nancy Finley. Does Ms. Finley wish to speak tonight? Can we bring her into the meeting?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Oh, okay. Thanks for, excuse me. Thanks very much, Ms. Finley. Then we will move on to Barbara Marshall. Barb Marshall is our next speaker. If we can bring her in.
Okay, can you hear me, Mary Lehman?
We can hear you. Go ahead, Barb.
First of all, I also want to, give a special mention to, what Stephen Kinsella said, because what he didn't tell you is he's an over 30-year service OPP officer, retired. So you kind of had the OPP sitting there at the corner giving you that kind of advice. So I just think that needs to be identified. My name is Barbara Marshall, and I live at 72 Lionsgate Boulevard, along with my husband, Archie, my property. I want to say that Ray Duhamel did a good job in identifying the themes of that meeting on June 9th last year, for which I attended. And clearly traffic, parking, building lot, because the idea of even doing staggered buildings was discussed by the participants. So it was good in terms of listening to that. But I also sat through the presentation by Park Place, and what I felt and what I saw was it looked like more of a development that, kind of recognized residential and commercial. And, it needs to be identified that the developer is the owner of the North Barrie retail area. So, getting 505 new current units certainly does add, to the customer base. But when I take a look, I only see that building 2 has at least an amenity in terms of a rooftop terrace, but not much with respect to building 1 or 3. And so it still needs to fit, I think, aesthetically, you know, within a residential development. It's not up to me, I don't think, to argue about strategic growth area and the compact use of land. I expect planning committee to do that. But I mean, let's be, you know, real. That went from, you know, 200 residential to 505. You also recognize that when you realize 1.5 cars per unit, I'm up to 758 cars needing to be dealt with respect to ingress and egress. I like the idea, obviously, and we did bring that meeting in on June 9th of last year about a traffic engineer. So again, I expect the city of Barrie that they would do their due diligence with respect to it, because in addition to those number of cars being added, you know, to Cundles, we need to also recognize that there's currently ongoing development on James Massey Way, Lakeview condos, and the expectation of another condo happening at Little Lake Drive. And again, thinking about the compounding of traffic congestion on, you know, Cundles, and then now we're proposing 505 additional units on Cundles coming in. So I think really that is a significant concern. We see traffic calming speed bumps already on Lionsgate before any of these particular developments that I've just mentioned are even available to the public. So again, can you imagine when all of them are fully operational? Nobody's arguing that the city of Barrie doesn't need more rental units, or that we realize there's a critical shortage of rental units to, you know, address the housing needs of many deserved Barrie families. We're just asking that the city of Barrie and the developer need to make well-informed decisions that consider the needs of all families in that surrounding Ward 3 community. I see, in fact, when we had our meeting, that at one point in time, you know, we talked about how many surface parking lots, you know, or sorry, parking, as you know, spots would be available on the surface. But I'd also like to know that, I guess he's, you know, we hear that it's been reduced down to 95. Than from what was discussed in June. But, you know, maybe the aspect of a little bit more green space. I mean, I think, you know, trying to, you know, squeeze things in, and I don't know what the 400 will identify on, you know, the height requirements that are being identified, but it just would appear that, is this a compact use of land, or is this sort of, you know, excessive? And again, I will expect the planning committee to do their due diligence on behalf of, you know, the constituents in Ward 3. That's all I have to add, Your Honor. I do appreciate this opportunity to present my concerns. But again, I think Mr. Duhamel did a good job in summarizing our meeting of last year. And you know, I'm a little bit more heartened in the fact that, you know, the idea of the traffic and the parking is being identified. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about open space, landscaping, the amenities of the rooftop terrace from Mr. Duhamel when he can, to give us an indication of what is going to be proposed.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms. Marshall. Thanks for those comments and being on the call tonight.
You're welcome.
Our next registered speaker is Stephen Parker. Can we bring Mr. Parker into the call?
Yes, good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. We moved to Barrie in the middle of June of this year after 47 years in Brampton. And I live at 295 Cundles in Unit 501, which is facing directly east to the rising sun. And we have fantastic views of Little Lake and of the bush in the distance. From a personal point of view, I believe that this will be completely ruined by the building of an 11-story building that, based upon the architectural drawings provided in the proposal, means that my windows facing east will be less than 100 feet, in fact 29.1 meters from the windows of such a new building. And frankly, I think that is horribly close. And regardless of any shadow studies that I've seen, if I'm on the 5th floor and I'm facing an 11-story building, there's going to be shadow. I don't believe that this particular plot of land can take 505 units. That's probably over 1,000 people. And as Mr. Kinsella indicated, probably well over 1,000 cars. I concur with his view of the potential traffic issues. And if I might be permitted to compare other developments in the city of Barrie with the distances between the buildings, I did a study, a limited study, albeit on Google Earth, but Google Earth is an accepted resource, and using the measurement system within that application, for instance, on Kozlov Street, there are 2 buildings that are close together, but one building faces the end wall of another, so it wouldn't interfere with the residents of either. On Coulter Street, there are 3 buildings, but none look into other units. The Marina Bay condominiums on Lakeside Terrace are much farther apart than the 29 meters that we would be looking at here. The buildings on Ellen Street overlooking Lakeshore Drive are more than 100 meters apart, not the 29 meters that we will be looking at here. On Ellen Street, there is an SCC 354 where there are buildings are well over 50 meters apart. The Grand Harbour condominiums on Toronto Street are over 40 meters apart. The buildings at 140 and 150 Dunlop are over 40 meters apart. I'm not sure how the city can justify building developments that are less than 100 feet apart. I think it is totally unacceptable. I understand that there was a zoning bylaw amendment in 2016 that allowed for the junction to be developed. That doesn't mean to say that every bylaw or zoning bylaw application to amend should be granted just because it's been made. I would be interested to learn exactly how many, if any, such zoning bylaw amendment applications have in fact been successfully and permanently denied by the city. I did ask such a question to Ward 3 Councillor Ms. Cundle. On the September the 5th, I haven't received a reply to that. I don't believe the current density will support an additional 505 units. And I would be urging you in the strongest possible terms not to approve this or any future zoning bylaw amendment that would permit construction of multi-story buildings at 303 Cundles Road. We obtained this unit on the basis of this huge sign on that piece of land saying it is zoned for retail. And as such, I would have to consider seriously moving if such a development would be made. And I thank the council for allowing me to speak.
Mr. Parker, thank you for your comments and for being here tonight. Our next registered speaker is Mir Abid. Is Mr. Abid or Ms. Abid here?
Yeah, hello.
Hello. Welcome to the Planning Committee, Mr. Abid. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abid Mir. I'm at 295 Cundle Road East. The points that I wanted to make, I already sent in writing, and the previous speakers have already covered those points in great detail, so I would not really go into that. kind of detail, but I just wanted to urge the committee members to please look into it very seriously. That the Planning Act of Ontario does categorically requires that any development should be orderly, should be safe, and should be healthy. The proposed density of population on an 80 units to 505 more than 6 times. There are some technical evaluations in the documents, but I did not see any thing that would really qualify to be an orderly development that would give any social impact of that kind of density on an 80 units to 6 times increased population. And I personally, in my view, don't consider that a healthy development. So I would urge the committee members to please look into those aspects which have been covered in great detail by the previous speakers. And I thank you for this opportunity that you gave me to speak up here. And thank you. Bye.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being here and for giving us those comments as well. Our last registered speaker is Tina Kerr. Is Ms. Kerr available to come in the call? All right, Ms. Kerr, welcome to Planning Committee, and the floor is yours. So while we're waiting to try and bring the last speaker into the meeting, I'm going to go to Councillor Cundle for any questions of clarification for the applicant or our planner. Councillor Cundle, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I do have several points of clarification if it should help raise some information for others that have had questions but are not speaking tonight on their behalf. So the first one to Mr. Duhamel, nice to see you, Ray. On your traffic study report on page 11, there's a nice table that does identify that these residential buildings are really focused at 1 and 2 bedroom units. We've had some questions about affordability and kind of supporting individuals. And in your planning justification report, you talk a bit about more attainable housing. And I was wondering if you could speak to the intention of the ways in which you've looked at 1 and 2 bedroom units to support access to housing in this development. And in particular, one of your recommendations talks about in the report, if I can find it accurately, reference to, instead of, I believe, parks, cash and lieu of parkland or other aspects, actually really looking at conditions tied to affordable housing. And I thought that was an interesting recommendation, and I was wondering if you could explain more about that.
Mr. Duhamel.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Cundle. So very good question. We spent with the project team and the Panady ownership a lot of time talking about affordable housing, attainable housing, and the desire is one of the reasons why properties like this have been identified in the official plan for significantly more residential growth, because it provides those opportunities for more units, more affordable, more attainable, all across the spectrum. So specifically, we're in a bit of an odd time with the way labor prices and construction prices are going. So in talking it through with the owners, they don't even know what it's going to cost to build these units in a year or two's time from now, depending on the timeline, if council ultimately approves this application and it proceeds through to construction, which that could be site, at the best case scenario, site servicing in 2023, and then 18 plus months to build. So you're looking at somewhere in what that maps out to, maybe 2025. So what's the cost of the units going to be? But so one of my recommendations was that the city before then will have to develop a community benefits bylaw. That's the changes to the Planning Act. And part of those community benefits, and it's already laid out in the community benefit policies in the OP, is talking about affordable housing as part of that. So my recommendation is that there's lots of reasons why you could use community benefits for a variety of great things that help our communities. But I think until we as a community overall, I live and work in Barrie means everything to me. I think until we tackle the affordable housing front, I think that should be number one on our list when we're talking about community benefits for an increase in height or density, which is specifically what we're talking about on this site. So my recommendation that I wrote in my planning report is to talk about if staff are going to develop a community benefits bylaw, that bylaw is going to continue to identify affordable housing as one of the components, then to use that community benefits as the tool to drive towards more affordable housing units. And when it comes to size, I will say we're at the zoning bylaw amendment stage, and the traffic study is anticipating that they're not going to be mostly 3-bedroom units. This is more typical of the 1 to 2 bedroom, but even the size of the individual units needs a lot more market review, and a lot of those really fine tooth details get worked out when we move into the site plan submission stage, where we're actually providing actual floor plans of at a much higher level. We've got quite a lot of architectural detail. SRM Architects has done a terrific job of providing floor plans for all the different units. They're all in the architectural package that was submitted, but it's really going to be a function of what can be accomplished as we move through this process, and what is staff's intention and council's intention ultimately as it relates to adopting a community benefits bylaw. So I hope I was clear enough in answering. I think I rambled on a little bit, and I apologize if I did.
No, thank you, Mr. Duhamel. That was great. I have a couple more questions, and I think I'm going to move to staff on these, and they build off of an awareness of the size units, the parking, and the traffic study. And to staff, while the submission at this point in time will be reviewed, and the traffic study identifies 180 to 220 two-way flow conditions, and it was felt in the document that was put forward that it meets current capacity of the Cundles and wouldn't require any type of accommodation for future road network. But as per Mr. Kinsella and many others, there is a concern for what we're already seeing in just traffic behavior. But also when we review this, I was wondering, the traffic study talks about a certain area of the block plan and conditions around the development being added. But we have 2 significant developments in the Little Lake area. So in particular, we have I believe 278 units with respects to the 10 and 20 Little Lake Drive. And we have another one that relates to one that's not even in construction yet. So when we're looking at the needs of Cundles Road and traffic and density, is it only scoped to the current development that's being proposed, or does it also appreciate for what's been approved but we don't yet have occupancy for or have seen an impact of?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Cundle. I can advise that the traffic study is under review by our transportation planning staff, as well that the terms of reference for completing the study was reviewed by staff in advance of it being submitted. All traffic studies take into consideration the future traffic considerations of new developments as well as projections, and they're provided by staff. So I certainly can bring this comment back to them, but it is under review by staff at the moment.
Great, thank you, Ms. Kitsamitri. If I may add another question that comes up around noise, and I've read through the technical report put forward. A piece that has been raised, especially as we're seeing the 400 sound barrier going up in the north end of Little Lake, and others that have already been identified. And of course, that's a Ministry of Transportation provincial decision. With this type of proposed development, should it go forward, at what stage would there be a consideration or merit given, at what density around the proximity of so many residential units being so close to Highway 400 that we would re-engage the Ministry of Transportation and advocate for sound barriers? Where would that actually come into play around a development so close to the 400 that looks at 505 units as being high density?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Cundle. I can advise that the Ministry of Transportation is currently involved in the review and does review all of the different submissions that come with the study. The noise component is primarily delegated to the city to implement. However, that is certainly something to consider, and I will make note of that for the review in my discussions with the ministry.
Thank you. And I think the only other piece, maybe if I can, and I know Mr. Duhamel touched on this in the presentation, but I'm still seeing perhaps a little bit of a question about when we look at the city website tied to this development, and we see that the brief on it talks about 6 stories, now 12. It seems like a very substantial jump, and I'm getting a lot of questions about is this actually a development that's trying to work within the future, not yet approved official plan or not? And can you confirm, it's my understanding in looking at the background history of this, that we're not even looking at receiving anything for an actual official plan amendment, that it's just a special provision, and what's being asked for already covers and is well within the current official plan document?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Cundle. The applications are currently under review by staff, including all of the specific requirements. So what we have presented to us tonight is what has been applied for, and staff will be reviewing the context of that through their analysis.
But it's, if I may, to add clarification, it's within the existing official plan. And it's just a special provision. We're not looking at any formal amendment to the official plan. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Cundle. That is correct. An official plan amendment was not applied for.
Okay. And then maybe a last point of clarification for Mr. Duhamel. In some of the documents, and it might just have been because they were tied to June documentation, there was some reference to the 8-story building being 7 stories. And I wasn't sure if that's just a dated document or if there was anything for us to appreciate around the underground parking plan actually being above grade. I believe in everything that I've read, it's at grade, but we're not seeing something where we are assuming the 8-story building is actually a height that we would expect of a 9-story because some of the underground parking is actually above the grade of the surface level. Could you clarify the underground parking and just reconfirm that that third building is 8 and not 7 stories?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Cundle, if I may. The building is 8 stories. The intention is for underground parking for all of the structures, not structured parking like in a podium format, which you typically see around the waterfront where we have very, very high groundwater levels. The intention is to have underground parking in all instances here.
And
so that would mean 8 stories for the mid building. Sorry.
Okay. Great, thank you. And is there any further clarification you can give on the rationale for the setback? So I know some individuals, and as we heard tonight, did identify that the preliminary meeting was the 3 10-story buildings. You've since come back with an adjustment around spacing. Is that setback tied to supporting the adjustment and or comments on views? Or is there anything in there that you can talk to about rationale for the setback in the special provisions you're seeking?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Cundle. The setback that we're requesting a reduction on is the area of the building closest to Highway 400 adjacent to that property line. So the school's property, the French Catholic Elementary School's property line, actually curves out into a triangle finger right behind the building closest to Highway 400. So that building doesn't actually abut Highway 400 for the most part. It abuts the school's property in a very odd triangular shape. So we're requesting a reduction from the current 7-meter standard just to reduce at that, basically the pinch point of the corner of that building, which has also been chamfered. But the setback only relates to that one specific location.
Great, thank you. And my final question was a couple that have come in consistently from residents, and I just want to check that it'll either be captured in the report back, but I'm not sure if you can speak to this at this time, Mr. Duhamel. I think one resident we heard from tonight spoke to safety. I am getting a lot of questions about at what point in time are there safeguards that change around construction material once you reach over 6 feet and up? And some are asking about, being accustomed to being in a certain structure that's made of wood framing versus a conversion to cement or other material. Would that happen further down in the process of approval and review, or are you able to identify what the 8 and upward stories would be constructed of?
Well, through your worship to Councillor Cundle, there has been no final decisions made as it relates to building materials. I believe the building code now allows up to 10. It was for a number of years 6. Before that, it was 4. I believe the intention in this instance is concrete and steel, but quite frankly, the final decision on the building materials has not been made, and that would be determined as you move forward through. There's 2 subsequent processes. If council, planning committee first, and then council ultimately were to deem that this application should be approved, then the second step of that process is we need site plan approval, which is a very detailed technical process of providing specific servicing and landscaping and electrical and other technical drawings and reports and calculations and modeling. And then there's a third component of it, which is even more detailed on the specific building levels, and that goes to the actual building permit plan. So it takes months and months to prepare those plans, and then it takes a long time for city building staff to go through and review all of those plans. So that's where there's literally, 10,000 is probably not enough details that we go through as part of the site plan and into the building permit process. But when it comes to safety fencing and in terms of construction, there is things such as a crane swing plan, which we actually included in this application. It was included in one of the plans. And there's going to be very detailed plans at the site plan approval stage relating to fencing. The city hasn't typically, in my experience, I've worked in city on many projects, as you know. I don't recall temporary fencing being part of that, but certainly if that's a question as it relates to the adjacency of the junction, that's something that I suspect could be reviewed as part of the site plan approval process, but that would be up to ultimately just having a dialogue with staff on that.
That's great. Thank you. And those are my questions.
Thanks, Councillor Cundle. I understand that our staff were able to reach Ms. Curran. She does not wish to speak tonight, so I'll give a final call. Is there anyone in the chambers or anyone else online who wishes to speak at this public meeting? Okay, seeing none. I will declare this public meeting concluded. Thank you to all those who participated tonight. And the timing on this staff report, I'm sorry if you gave it during the update. Are we anticipating it before the end of the year or early in 23?
I imagine it will be in 2023.
2023. Okay, thank you very much. Members of Planning Committee, we have no other items on the agenda except for inquiries of staff related to planning matters. Does anyone on the committee? Councillor Cundle.
Thank you. I'll make it brief. Mayor Lehman, it does have to do with planning and development that was recently identified around a telecommunications tower. Questions I am getting are respective of a policy the city has dating back to 2012. Question to Ms. Banfield. We did receive some questions around that in process. Is that policy in general something that comes up for review based on just because it's been a recent point of conversation, or would a review of that telecommunications policy need to go through council for direction to staff?
Sorry, Councillor Conger, are you asking about where towers go?
No, it's the actual telecommunications policy we have that identifies a parameter for how residents get engaged depending on the height of the tower and other considerations. And we've had feedback for requests for review of perhaps considerations of that policy.
Got it. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Cundle. Typically, it really depends. If there's something that changes a council policy, then staff will bring it back. I'm sure Madam Clerk can advise that council can most likely update their policies when they would like to.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Cundle. Yeah, we can look at council policies periodically, especially if they come to council sometimes if there's a legislative change or if there's a change in process, they can be looked at periodically.
If I may then to further clarify that, I'm assuming it would have to come through a motion to council if there was a recommendation to amend that policy.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Cundle. Yes, if you'd like staff to review the policy proactively, then a direction from council would be required.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cundle. Any other inquiries from members of the Planning Committee? Okay, seeing none, this completes our agenda. City Council meeting will be Wednesday, September 21st. For those few still watching, We've moved to Wednesday because of the National Day of Mourning on Monday. So that'll be council Wednesday, September 21st, 7 p.m.